Hey y'all, it's your girl Aaron, and today I wanted to talk about ethics. So, I think ethics is really important, and I would like to give you a few of my thoughts around ethics. Hopefully it's interesting. I'm not going to be doing any editing or anything, so I really hope this is audible. But yeah, so I think ethics is something that has always been around, and I think everything you say and do has an ethical component to it. So, understanding ethics means you can understand the ethical components of what we're doing, and what that means really is cause and effect. Ethics is about understanding the impact and effect actions have in society. And I would say that for most of history, ethics was communicated through either culture or religion, or maybe both, but you may have cultural practices like manners or something that are attempting to teach you ethics. Now, we can get on to how manners is pretty bourgeoisie form of ethics, but anyway, I'm not here advocating for manners. I'm just mentioning that that's one of the ways ethics that, and it's ethic. Not all ethical theories, not all ethical statements or ideologies are helpful or good for society. But yeah, and religion is the other one, and religion is also usually about ethics. Well, I think religion is pretty much always about ethics. It's just a different set of ethics. And so now in the modern day, we have tried to establish ethical theories or understandings that don't rely on religion. And so that would be, for example, like laws and legal systems. They're an attempt at a collaborative ethic building project, I guess, that is not religious, although you do get religious law and stuff. But in secular countries, they basically have that. And then you also get people who argue for ethics to be something that comes out of each individual person and not specifically from the systems that you are at play. So I would say that there's actually maybe four different sources for ethics, for where people see the justification or the reason, the validity or the reason why those ethics in particular are right. Their sources would either be from getting into like the religious side, like maybe from a divine being or divine sacred text or a divine spirit or whatever, but it's from the divine. It's a supernatural idea of where ethics comes from. Then you have your social, the social area where ethics can come from, and that's where you communicate to each other socially about causes and effects and work out an ethical model socially together. Then there is ethics that might has been attempted before that has been based on maths. So it's almost similar to taking your ethics from like a divine source. It's just in that case the divine source would be maths, but they failed to really get a good set of ethics from maths so far. Although I don't think it's entirely impossible to get there maybe, but your maths would have to be really complicated to be accurate. So I don't think it's a good thing on its own. And then you get people who say, your ethics can come from within you, and that, if you deem something to be ethical, then that's ethical or whatever. So I would argue that out of all of those models, I would say the the most valid is if your source comes from your society, socially determined. The next most valid would probably be maths, and the next most valid after that would probably be an individual person, and then last most valid I would say would be the divine being. And the reason I would rank them like that, well, unfortunately, by its very nature, divinity is untestable. And so ethics that can't be tested is ethics that can't be improved, really. And if it can't be improved, then how is it going to adapt to changes in society? Um, Society is constantly changing, and if our ethics aren't also constantly changing, then there's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be things that are now taking place that there is no ethical framework for, and so divinity is particularly static. And although sometimes there are people who try and update sort of the divine interpretations, it always meets resistance because of the opinion that it's perfect to begin with, which is not very helpful with ethics, in my opinion. Then you have coming from the individual person, and that has some evidence because it's evidence from your own experience. And that is not something that should be ignored. Although, if that is all your ethics come from, if you only are taking it, or I would say even if the majority of your ethics are coming from yourself, you're not going to be a very nice person to be around in society because you're not going to be taking other people into consideration. And the thing is, you might say, well, do to others as you would want them to do unto you. That would maybe be a way of trying to derive ethics from within, where you say, well, how would I want to be treated, and let me treat other people that way. Now, that's okay in a vague sense, as an effort to make to be considerate of the things that you don't like and not to do them to others. But in many cases, the way someone wants you to respond to them might be different than the way that you like to be responded to. And so, for example, maybe you are someone who doesn't like hugs, and someone else really likes hugs and they're feeling upset and they would really like to be hugged, but then you are using your own ethics and you like, well, I don't like hugs, so I'm not going to hug them, which is fine on your, or maybe if we turn around, you're someone who really likes hugs, because not giving someone a hug, like, that's kind of actually fine. But if you turn it around, let's say you're someone who likes hugs and someone else doesn't and they're feeling sad, and you just want to give them a hug without their permission or whatever because you're like, well, I like it, then that's unethical. So it can't only come from within. It needs to put others basically first, then yourself. So then we have maths, and if you can have a mathematical model that correlates to the individual and societal understandings of things, then that can be a tool. But again, it can't be where you get most of your input from. So maybe maths can be stuff like, if we reveal through stats that white supremacy leads to terrorism, then you can use the maths in your model to say, well, we have mathematical evidence that white supremacy is a harmful ideology. Now, you might also go even further and try to model out the maths, and there's actually a really interesting area of maths, I forgot the word, field or domain, that is called category maths, where it's not so much about numbers as about the relationships between things. And that's a kind of maths that can start to map out society, but that's sort of like, that's going to be really difficult. And so I think you always need to put people first and use your mathematical and individual, and even if you have some divine input, it's all supplemental, and then what other people say and responding actively to society, that's the best source for your ethics, in my opinion. And so whether it's a religion or a non-religion or whatever it is that you're getting your ethics from, it needs to be something that responds to other people first. It needs to be something that has some sort of consistency to it, because you don't want to have certain people being treated favorably above others, and you want to have it be relatable to people. They need to feel like they can work with that model, that they feel like they are safe from harm and that they can avoid harming others through it. And if you're inspired by any type of divinity towards being more ethical towards others, then that's a good motivation and inspiration to have in you. And so I think it's useful to think of ethics as a social technology. So if you look at other technologies like our transportation technologies, at first we had to walk or run, then we learned how to ride on the backs of animals who could carry us, and then we made carts and things for those animals to pull. Now, not really cool to be doing that to animals, but then we came up with machines that could do it instead of animals, and we're constantly advancing in our technology, building upon what we've learned before to ever increasing heights, basically. And now we have electric cars, which is like the next evolution of cars, really, and who knows where we go from there. Now, when it comes to ethics, I think it's quite similar, where it's like a social technology that requires work, and you need to be building upon the foundations of what you have before, and that people can advance it and come up with better understandings, better models, and that you are always going to be trying to improve your ethical model as a society to better include, all the things that it needs to include, all the complexities of real life. Eventually, your ethical model needs to be so complicated that it's, but also so simple. I mean, when I say complicated, I mean it needs to cater for all the complexities, but it can still have very simple underlying principles, like you should not harm others, and you should, you can make those kinds of simple determinations. But yeah, figuring out whether something is actually harmful to someone else, that can get really complicated sometimes. But anyway, it is a technology, and so we can get better at that, and we can improve our theories, improve our tools, improve our ways of communicating with each other, so that it's slightly invisible, but we're all operating this machine and working on it and having it impact us in our lives. And as with normal technologies, there is a bit of inertia. So whatever system people are used to, they are reluctant to give that up because it's comfortable to be in what you know. And so with advances in ethical technologies, it does meet resistance. And let's not forget that if you're going to something more ethical, there's certain people benefiting from the less ethical model that you're in right now. And so the people who are benefiting from current unethicalness are going to resist adoption of a more ethical model. Even if it doesn't directly oppose them, getting more ethical does endanger them, because eventually they will get addressed. And so, yeah, so you're going to get resistance. So now if you look at like the fossil fuel industry and how it's resisting electric cars and stuff, then that gives you an example of where there's a lot of inertia and it's quite difficult. But if something is actually really genuinely better, it's only a matter of time before, as long as people are actually putting in the effort, because technology doesn't advance automatically. It requires effort by lots of people to move it forward. But let's say people keep pushing to move electric cars forward, it's already better than a gas car if you use it, but it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be even better. It's, the technology for making it will improve. Things like self-driving technologies will get added to it, and eventually it just becomes way too valuable a tool to not adopt. And you call those types of breakthroughs, in a sense, disruptive, because once it goes mainstream, once you adopt this new technology, all the old technology is kind of seen as obsolete, and nobody, you might have a few people who as a hobby are interested in it, the novelty aspects of it, but nobody wants to make it the way everyone does their life anymore. Like, no one's going around saying like, let's ditch cars and go back to horse-drawn carriages. So yeah, so as so it's the same with wow, that is a annoying beeping noise. I don't know if you can hear it. Some truck is reversing. It is ridiculously hard to find anywhere remotely quiet around here because the park is closed today, and anywhere that's not the park has construction sounds or cars everywhere. Anyway, almost done. So yeah. So as with the fossil fuel industry and how electric cars I think will be disruptive in that space, and disruptive technology, there's many examples, that's just one, but I think it's the same with social technologies, that there is resistance and pushback from those who benefit from the existing technology. So representative democracy might be an ethical model of social technology that we are currently using, and direct democracy is way more better and valuable to everyone, but there's resistance to it, right? But once it gets adopted as our mainstream way of doing things, no one's going to want to go back to representative democracy. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to share, and I'm really getting distracted by this beeping truck now, so even if there was anything else I wanted to say, I forgot it. But I hope this was helpful and it wasn't too long. Hopefully I didn't waffle, and anyway, now I am waffling. Thanks for watching. Bye.